Hello and welcome to AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. I'm your host, John S. This episode is going to be a little bit different than what we normally do on the podcast because I'm not going to have a guest. It's just going to be me and you talking. And I haven't done this since our very first episode when we were first introducing AA Beyond Belief and laying out our vision for it and what we were planning on doing. I'm doing this now because I feel like I need a reboot. And I just want to kind of talk about ideas that I have for the podcast and website going forward. And hopefully to hear back from you to see if you have any ideas or suggestions on what we can do differently. So that's what this podcast is all about. It's kind of like a reboot to re-energize me, to make a renewed commitment to you to produce these podcast episodes on a more regular basis. But before we start looking forward, let's take a look back at where we came from so that everybody understands why we do this to begin with. Okay, it wasn't my idea to do this. It really wasn't. What happened was back in 2015, the summer of 2015, actually, Roger C. was contemplating retiring from AA Agnostica. And he contacted me to ask me if I would start a website that would replace AA Agnostica, that would provide a place for atheists and agnostics in AA to share their stories. So I said, sure, without even stopping to think about the work involved doing it. I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I like building websites, so I thought it would be fun. And we went and did it. We started AA Beyond Belief, and I had help early on. Bob Kay was a huge help. He's the author of Key Players in AA History, and he wrote a lot of the early material for the site. And he also allowed us to post stories from his book, Key Players. So we did a lot of Bob Kay stuff early on. It was almost like the Bob Kay site. Roger wrote for us early on too, as did Thomas B., a good friend of mine, and John L., Freethinker and Alcoholics Anonymous. A lot of people contributed. Steve K. from the UK. There's just more people helped than I could possibly name here in this podcast. But probably nobody helped me as much as my dear friend Doris A. from Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. Doris was our chief editor. So her job was to solicit articles. So she would go out and she would ask people to write for us. And after they would write an article, they would send it to her, and she in turn would forward that on to Galen T. in New Jersey or PJ in Sydney, Australia. They are our proofreaders and editors. And so, what they would do is they would take that story after they received it from Doris, and they would polish it up to make it as readable and as appealing as possible. And they would work closely with the author while they did that. And then Doris also would have like Catherine or Cope take original photography that we would use with the articles. I mean, it was a lot of work. There would be a lot of back and forth communication between them and the author to make sure everybody liked the changes made to the story, that they liked the images that were being used. It was just a huge amount of work. But it was great that she did that because I didn't have to worry about the written content at all. All I had to do was focus on the podcast. And I used to do a bunch of podcasts at that time. So that's kind of how we got started. And we've been pretty good. We've been consistent about posting our articles. I mean, there's been times when we would take a break and maybe not post for a little bit. But, for by and large, we've been posting every week. The podcast, oh boy, I was going strong on that. I do like a podcast a week for a good long time, but it seems like really for almost a year now, I've just not been doing them. I've really slowed down a lot, kind of hit a wall. And I'm going to go into that a little bit later, but that just kind of gives you an idea about the beginnings of AA Beyond Belief. And, the one thing that I think is unique about it is that it's a group effort. What was important to me early on is that AA Beyond Belief not be identified with me personally, that people not think of it as my site. I wanted it to be your site. I wanted to create something that would live on beyond me. So what I did is I created a nonprofit organization and I created a board of directors to go with it. And my whole idea was to have this business side board of directors that would make sure the bills were paid, that we were filing our paperwork with the state, that we were reporting our finances to people who contributed to the site. And then we would have this creative side that would be writing the stories, that would be editing the stories, that would be working with people and getting stories published, that would be taking care of the website, that would be, doing the photography, all the artistic stuff. The whole idea was that the people on the artistic side wouldn't have to worry with the business side. But what happened in actual fact is it overlapped. So Thomas B., Doris, and myself were on the board of directors doing the business side, but we were also doing the artistic side. I never could get people that could just do the business side. So in addition to doing the podcast, I was also doing financial reporting, which I used to be really good at, but I just have stopped doing. So it's just a lot of work. A lot of work is involved in putting this thing together, but it's been worthwhile. I have not enjoyed anything more than my time here at AA Beyond Belief. I have received emails from you that have been so humbling and gratifying. When you tell me how much the podcast and website means to you and how it has helped you, that is what inspires me to move on. It is just the greatest thing in the world. So if you can think about it and you would like to send an email to let me know, how the podcast and website has impacted you in your recovery, I would love to hear from you. Just send me an email, john@aabeyondbelief.org. So yeah, it's been a great experience and I've learned so much. I mean, it's just been amazing to speak with doctors that are experts in addiction medicine, to speak with people who've written books. I've learned a lot about AA history from authors, and I've learned about recovery from different authors. Just all kinds of everything, and speaking with people from different parts of the world and learning what AA is like in those areas. I mean, I know I've spoken with people from Japan, from South Africa, from Europe, the UK, Canada, United States, all over the United States. I mean, just everywhere, and it's just been the greatest experience ever. So it's been great. Now, it is a lot of work, no doubt about that. And it does cost money too. And I've not been really good about, asking for money on a regular basis. And I've tried different things and just haven't been real successful at that. And I had some volunteers to help with the business side, but I was just so overwhelmed with work. I couldn't even coordinate the effort to get them on board to help me. So that's something I need to work on. It's hard to balance sometimes, the work that I do here with my other responsibilities. And I think that I got a little overextended because, I'm involved with, my home group, with my district, with the area, with just my regular job that I have to do. I just overextended myself. So I'm kind of getting out of some other things that I'm just going to look at focusing on AA Beyond Belief. The one thing I want to bring up, a little concern or something I've been thinking about, is I sometimes wonder if we need to rebrand the podcast. And I'll tell you why. It's got that name AA in it. And it's not like that's a bad thing because most of us are AA members. But the thing is, sometimes I feel like it restricts me a little bit. It hasn't. I mean, we've done a lot of episodes that deal with things that aren't talked about in Alcoholics Anonymous, that would be quite controversial. For example, the Sinclair method, where you actually take a pill where you can drink normally. It's crazy talking AA, or talking about sugar and food addiction or sex addiction or, different what they call outside issues in Alcoholics Anonymous. We discuss those freely here, but we do it because I just figured that, we want to talk about things that you're interested in. And I know that AA members are interested in more than just singleness of purpose issues. I mean, we want to talk about a wide array of issues that have to do with recovery. So that's what we do here. So I don't know, maybe it's not necessary to rebrand. Maybe we're free to talk about whatever we want to, but sometimes I just feel like having AA in our name just kind of, I don't know, maybe it's not a big deal, but let me know what you think about that. And should we call it something else? I don't know. So anyway, that's the one concern that I have going forward, that I've been thinking about a little bit. But it's probably a moot point, but anyway, just something to think about. So let's talk about the plans for the podcast and the website, some things that I'd like to do. I would like to, for the website, eventually have a redesign to make it look more modern, use a different theme, have it look better and be more functional on mobile devices than it is currently, to make to recategorize some of our articles so that it's easier to find something that you're interested in reading about, things like that. As far as the podcast goes, I kind of like what we've been doing. I like the personal stories that kind of evolve into conversations. The STEP podcasts that I did with Ben were among our most popular. So perhaps I might want to start doing that again, going through the steps. I think it would be good to have co-host on again. Ben from Omaha did a lot of podcasts with me early on. Also, a friend of mine is interested in helping out. His name is Wes B, and he's been on a couple of podcasts with me to talk about some books. And he has expressed an interest in helping out. So I thought that would be nice as well. So, yeah, and I would like to start getting back to posting these podcasts on a more consistent and regular basis, even if it's just every other week. But I kind of like doing them weekly. It's a lot of work, but like I say, I'm kind of weeding some other things out. So maybe I can make a better commitment to doing that. I've got some episodes lined up, coming up to do. The next one that we will be posting is going to be Mike Collins, and Mike wrote a book about sugar and food addiction, basically sugar addiction. And he also has a website about sugar addiction. And he's going to talk about his experience as an alcoholic and addict who, when he was getting off of alcohol and drugs, he got addicted to sugar. And he learned that by getting off of sugar, he was healthier and happier, and it just enhanced his recovery. So it's a topic we've talked about in the past, and I think it's an important one. I think that we could do better in AA to have a more holistic approach to our recovery. Rarely do we ever talk in meetings about, doing things for our physical health, our diet and exercise, things like that. It's all about emotional health. Well, our emotions are tied to our physical well-being. So I think it's worthwhile to talk about. And I can certainly, use it myself. I mean, I'm not in great shape right now. I've not been exercising and eating right. So it's good for me to talk to these people about these things because it kind of inspires me as well. Another episode that we have coming up is I'll be interviewing the Sober She-Devils, which is an online secular AA meeting for women, which has been going on for a couple of years. The women have gotten to be really good friends. And for example, the last time we had a convention for the International Conference of Secular AA in Toronto, a bunch of them got together and they all had now matching t-shirts and stuff. I know a lot of these women. They're really great people, and it'll be fun talking to them. What I'm going to do, I'm going to record it on Zoom, which is the software that they use for having their meetings. And there's going to be a group of them, maybe 3, 4, 5, I don't know how many. And we'll all just have a group discussion, which I think will be fun. It's a good way to get the word out about their meeting, and it's a topic that is I think interesting about how online meetings can be helpful to a person's recovery. And it's nice for people to know that there's a secular option out there, and particularly for women. I think there really is a need for women's meetings to this day. After talking to some of the women in my group, I think it's pretty obvious that there's a need for it. So another episode I have coming up, which I'm actually looking forward to, my old friend John H. from DC. John has been on a couple of podcasts. We did a podcast with him like real early on, Myth of the Angry Atheist. And then we also did a podcast of his talk at the Widening the Gateway conference in Olympia, Washington, which was actually a very excellent, very well done talk. John and I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'll let him state his position on his own. But from what I understand, he's of the opinion that, those of us who participate in secular AA meeting should probably just start our own organization and just kind of leave AA for good. So I thought it would be interesting to have him on the podcast, and we could have like a little bit of a debate maybe, because I don't fully believe what he's saying, but I would love to hear his views. I mean, I could listen to him and respectfully disagree with him if that's the case. But quite frankly, he might convince me otherwise. And I don't know. I get a little burned out from the traditional AA crowd. I can barely stand these traditional AA meetings. And I don't know, maybe it is a good idea that we start off and do our own thing. I don't know, but it'll be fun to talk with him. So that's coming up too. I don't have anything planned after that. So if you would like to appear on the podcast, send me an email at john@aabeyondbelief.org and we can set up a time. All you have to do is share your story. And from that, a conversation will emerge and we'll take it from there. Or maybe you have something going on at your group you want to talk about. Maybe you want to talk about starting a group. That's always a good topic, because, I get emails quite often from people asking how to start an AA group. And I tried to write an article about it, but it's just so much work to write an article. I thought, well, it'd be fun to do a podcast about it. So, we can do a podcast about starting an AA group. So yeah, I've had a lot going on here in Kansas City. It's good though. It's all good stuff. We started a meeting out here, the KC Secular AA Speaker Meeting, which we turned into a podcast. You can listen to those podcasts at secularaaspeaker.org. That's been a lot of fun. There's been some challenges with that, because although we have a lot of meetings here, we have like 8 meetings a week in Kansas City, Missouri, secular meetings, but we don't have a whole lot of us. So we're kind of like running out of people to ask to speak, and we ran out pretty quickly. And also our group is pretty young, both in age of the members and the length of sobriety. So there's not a lot of people that are comfortable enough to get up and share their story. So we might have to reach out and have people like you share your stories remotely with us at our meeting. So we could do that, which would be a lot of fun. So if you're interested in doing that, let me know, john@aabeyondbelief.org. So yeah, so those are things that are going on over here. I was working closely with my district, but as a treasurer, but I'm not going to be doing that anymore. I am the chair of the archives committee for the Western area of Missouri. I'm going to try to continue doing that. Some exciting things that are coming up. In September, on the 6th, I'll be going to SOAR, the Secular Ontario AA Roundup, and I will participate on a panel that Roger is hosting about the 12 steps. So that'll be interesting. And then on September 21st here in Kansas City, we're going to be celebrating the 5th anniversary of We Agnostics Kansas City and the 4th anniversary of the Freethinkers and AA group here in Kansas City. And we've invited Joe C. from Rebellion Dogs Radio to come down and speak. So we've already got the date set, September 21st. We have the place, 6425 Warnell Road, HJ's Youth and Community Center. So we're set to go. Just have to pay for it. Get Joe down here and it's a done deal. So that'll be fun. We also started a step meeting here in Kansas City, a secular step meeting, which has been interesting. We're using the book, Staying Sober Without God by Jeffrey Munn. And that's a book that, Wes and I did a podcast about that. I think it was just the last episode. It's a great book to use for step work. And basically what we're doing is we started off with just kind of an introduction of AA history, because a lot of the people that come to our group, they don't know anything about AA. They've not read the big book or anything. So I kind of, at the very first meeting, we just kind of went over what I understand to be the 4 foundational moments of AA, starting with Roland speaking with Dr. Carl Jung, where Dr. Jung says you're hopeless, but every once in a while, alcoholics have these spiritual experiences. Roland goes to the United States, joins the Oxford group, searching for a spiritual experience, has it. Roland, in an effort to stay sober, helps Ebby Thatcher out of a tough spot. Ebby Thatcher carries his message on to Bill Wilson. Bill Wilson has an hallucinatory experience in Towns Hospital, which he thinks is spiritual. He meets Dr. Bob and AA is born. I think that's the 4 moments. Anyway, so we go through that and then we talk about what are the steps anyway. And basically the steps are a description of an experience of those people at that time. Their experience, not our experience. And it was written in language that explains the experience from their point of view. And obviously they're using religious language because they came from a religious organization, the Oxford group. We in 2019 are going to describe our experience a little bit different, quite a bit different than they do. So that's why it's nice to use Jeffrey's book, Staying Sober Without God, because it's written in modern language, so we don't have to interpret, like watching Turner Movie Classics or something. We can actually have, real modern day language and to discuss the steps. Now, I have used the big book in these meetings as just for like a historical reference, but that doesn't come without its challenges. I mean, that big book is not very well loved by our community. There were 2 people that commented on not liking the doctor's opinion, which we read. I do assign reading after the meeting. And one woman said that she thinks it's ridiculous that, Dr. Silkworth in the 1930s seems to be the last word on the subject of alcoholism. Like over the last 80 years, nothing else has been learned. And, she's got a good point. Why haven't they updated that? And then another woman, a younger one, Maggie, she said that she hated that he was calling alcoholism an allergy. So anyway, those are just little things. So imagine how they're going to feel when they read the chapter to the agnostics. I don't even know if I want to put them through that kind of torture. But anyway, I just thought it'd be a good idea to understand the history of AA and what traditional AA is like so that they understand and appreciate why we have to have these secular AA meetings. I mean, we have a lot of people that come to our group in Kansas City that have never ever been to a traditional meeting and they don't really understand. So I'd like them to see that, we're Alcoholics Anonymous, us atheists and agnostics, and we've been around since the very beginning, and this is where we come from, and this is where we are today. And so that's kind of what we're doing with the Secular Step Study. And something I'm thinking about doing is taking that Secular Step Study onto this podcast. So either with Ben or both, Ben and Wes, we can discuss those steps using Jeffrey's book, maybe actually even work through the steps on this podcast, and maybe even find a way to have some interaction with you as we do it. So that's just some things that is going on here in my life in Kansas City. Yeah, good stuff. I'm looking forward to the next through the rest of the summer. I'm going to really make a commitment to you to post these podcasts on a more regular, consistent basis. I'm going to try for once a week. I know that's a lot, but I think I can do it. And once I get into doing it, I really love it. But I do need some guests. So again, if you're interested, let me know. I think that about covers it for today's podcast. I hope this hasn't bored you to death. If you think about it, if you would like to support the podcast, I would love for you to do that. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. Just send us $1 or $2, $3, whatever. If you can make monthly contributions for $1 or $2, that would be great. I mean, if everybody who listened to this podcast and visited our website gave $1, we wouldn't have to worry about money. And we wouldn't have to ask for it either. But don't worry about it if you don't have it. We're not here to make money. But if you can support it, please, go to our donation page at AA Beyond Belief, and it would be very much appreciated. Also, if you have an inclination to write, please write something for AA Beyond Belief and send us your story. If you would like to participate on the board of directors and do the business side for AA Beyond Belief, please, I need help. If you'd like to be on the editorial board and do the creative stuff, let me know. I'd love to have you. If you have website experience and you'd like to redesign our website, go for it. Let me know if you want to get involved, because this is your site. It's not my site, and I want it to be your site. So once again, it was great talking to you. Our next podcast is going to be Mike Collins talking about sugar and food addiction. Until then, you all take care, be well. We'll talk again soon.